There was a moment during press night for The Normal Heart, now playing at the National's Olivier stage, when I was suddenly hit by a moment of inspiration. I had an idea that could mean the end of the financial struggles being faced by the National Theatre since lockdown was over. What is this idea, you may cry? I'll tell you. Tissues. Handy packs of tissues, made specifically for the purpose of crying. Tissues with an NT logo on the corner, just to make it feel kosher, and so you can charge at least £5 a pack, all wrapped up in a cute little name like National Theatres. You'd sell these packs of Theatres at the interval with the ice creams while the play runs until the 6th of November. Based on the floods of tears, the seas of tears, the oceans of tears gushing from every orifice on the night I saw it, it would raise enough to put on another war horse, maybe even a war stable. It would even pay for Imelda to ride the horse if you like. No, not only ride the horse, it would pay for her to be the horse. Because it's fair to say that sitting through almost 3 hours of Larry Kramer's sometime diatribe, sometime angry autobiography, is enough to tease tears from anyone. Well, anyone who doesn't think the world belongs only to the white heterosexual male, that is. And to be fair, even they will likely be moved to shed a tear at being reminded of the worst possible result that they could imagine. AIDS lost. And gay men don't just exist, they fucking thrive. You can't say that The Normal Heart is just a play. It demands the prefixes seminal and AIDS. That's a lot to do with its author, activist and all-round angry man Larry Kramer, who was capturing events as they were happening in the early 80s. He gave them voice through the characters that he created. Today, the piece can be seen as a documentary of American life for a gay man in 1983, 4 and 5. Looking at it today, though, the way the tale is told feels as much as part of the history as these events it purposefully pushes into the audience's faces. It's shocking to think how long ago this recent history feels. A time before AIDS was called AIDS, or anything. Something was killing people, and no one knew why. When they found out that it was killing gay men, no one really cared enough to find out more. 40 years ago, gays were thought of as mistakes. They were thought of as other. They were unable to be real men, so they acted like girls. They were unable to love, so they fucked like whores. That the virus maybe passed through gay sex. Haters thought it was deserved. Liberals thought it was to be expected. And it's in this world of the uneducated, both the heterosexual and homosexual, The Normal Heart came and rose above the gamut of the 80s gay play. By raising awareness of the lack of investment in research and putting faces onto half-known statistics, it became a kind of textbook of that time. Though, being of Kramer's pen, much of his narrow-minded opinion was given extra kudos by being placed aside more legitimised truths. Kramer's own view, for example, that gay men needed to take responsibility for deaths and stop thinking with their dicks, sat particularly badly with the gay community then, as it probably does now. The play is set in the early 80s, and it couldn't be about any other time. It couldn't be updated to any other time. But it also couldn't be written by any other writer. Kramer is through this piece. He as a person put the anger into activist. In the fight for equality, he took the fight literally. He would shout first and ask questions, possibly later, if he could be bothered. It was his approach and his attitude that led him to being seen as an outsider not only by his enemies, but by those he counted as friends. On the 30th of June 1982, Kramer founded the Gay Men's Health Crisis. It was the only service in New York to support HIV-positive men at the time. Less than a year later, he was fired by the other founders, who found his style and his abrasive nature too lone and too loud. And less than 2 years later, in April 1985, The Normal Heart premiered off-Broadway. The never-ending tirade that shouts and spits at you from the script makes you think you may not even have had time to take a breath. The result is a play that doesn't bother with trying to evoke empathy. Rather, it grabs you by the throat and punches at you until you acquiesce. Now, when people knew nothing about gay, let alone this gay disease, except there was no time for subtlety. But in 2021, watching it is like gorging on everything at an all-you-can-eat buffet. But in place of the chewy prawn crackers and tepid samosas, it wheels on plate after plate of debates, diatribes, disappointments, and death, and more death for dessert. We are force-fed so much dramatic emotion. Not crying at the end may cause ruptures. If it were possible to make this a style more palatable to an audience today, director Dominic Cooke has made no attempt at doing so. We might be watching a performance not only about 1985, but from 1985. It shows us how much writing has developed in this time. Our ears have become attuned to script and writing that is, well, to put it bluntly, an awful lot better. The overcooked cliche is the sort only ever heard in scripts written of a certain time, never heard in real life. The lumpy dialogue that has characters ask and answer their own questions rather than listen and converse to the person they're supposedly talking to. Filled with overused monologue, those 5-minute self-revelatory speeches each character has that are stuffed, full of emotional trigger words, but not of emotion. The speeches that are delivered to somewhere into the middle distance, rather than the person that's standing on stage with them. The poor actor on stage has to demonstrate the value of the acting lessons they took in how to do pretend listening. These are the speeches that are perfect for actors doing audition speeches. They're patronising for audiences. It's a pick and mix of never spoken speech. The stuff we would expect from a first-time writer or perhaps a good amateur. From the fill-in-the-blanks of X isn't my problem, Y is my problem. And you take care of X, I'll take care of Y. There's also the technique of semi-repetition that is never used in a real argument outside of maybe the schoolyard or soap opera. So after, now you wait a minute, we get, no, you wait a minute, obviously. Or, get off my back is preceded by, get off my ass. Or, you ain't my mother, gets, yes I am. Well, wouldn't seem out of place. Of course, the themes make the play emotive, but the style in which it is written restricts the performances that can be given. Here there are broadly two sorts of approaches taken. There's blind acceptance, willingness to accept what is on the page, do what you're told, and focus on acting technique to make up for any emotional depth. It's where you raise your voice because the stage directions say shouting. When stage directions say thinking, you vaguely stare down stage. Ben Daniels, as the main protagonist Ned Weeks, or the voice of Kramer, is good at shouting. He is good at making his voice heard. His performance is therefore good. Nice. Similarly, Liz Carr as Dr. Emma, fighting for investment, she is good at speaking quickly, which is a good way of showing she is frustrated. And though Carr stumbles on a few lines in the opening on the night I saw it, she is still good because we get the general gist. Alternatively, we see a great deal of uncomfortable underplaying. This is the style we're more accustomed to in theatre performances we see today. It's more naturalistic of conversation we would have. But when it's applied to the dated inflections given on the page here, it's a struggle for the actors to maintain. Luke Norris, as Weeks, Kramer's friendly nemesis, the mild-mannered Serial monogamist Bruce Niles underplays so damn hard it's difficult to judge his feelings and whether he cares about being the possible carrier and cause of every one of his boyfriend's deaths. And you can't help but think everyone's overreacting a little bit as they try to calm down Mickey, Daniel Meeks, when he gives what is more a mild-mannered update than the over-exhausted breakdown it's supposed to be. There are plays that will be forever thought of as classics. Even those of their time are written in a way that makes them feel timeless. The Normal Heart will be remembered, but because of its impact, not its quality. We should remember that the voice it gave to the ignored minority back then began the journey to the very different world we are living in today. A world where we voice opinions on everything from PrEP and gay marriage to Johan and Johannes and Drag Race, without it being a big deal, without anybody really caring. For these reasons that the Normal Heart and Larry Kramer have a rightful place in history. It should be studied in schools, it should always be remembered, and it should be revered. What it shouldn't be, as we're reminded here, is performed.